Welcome back. So in this episode, we're going to make the stick, the mass excavator stick for this model using brass. We're going to cut, solder, and assemble, and also make some other brass components that are going to go into other portions of this model. Stick around, guys, because this one's going to be fun. Alright, before we get brassing around in here, we need to disassemble the OEM stick because there's some stuff we need to take off this that is going to be going over to the new project. So as I learned previously, and I knew better, but I can't just hammer these pins out with the little pin driver here. I have to drill the tops out first, which is pretty much standard procedure for this type of component, but I thought I was cute and tried to shortcut it last time, and it didn't end well. Just taking just a little lip off the edge here. Let's see. Take this guy out. It's starting to turn it. So a lot of my my spare parts don't actually go to waste. If I can apply them to a future project, I will. If not, I just typically will sell them on eBay as part of a large lot. I actually do need to do a spare parts lot clearing here pretty soon. Go with a heavier duty hammer. Decent bucket. Of some detailing plans for this later. Decent looking hydra. To the side. And then last, just need to take the piston out of here. Well, I do not need this for this project anymore, so this will go in the old parts tray, and I do believe we will see it again on a future project. Alright, so a lot of the stuff that I do, I just eyeball, knock it out. But I was fortunate enough to find a side profile picture of a 245 mass excavator that had the 3-meter boom, or the 3-meter stick on it. So what I did is I loaded that image into Adobe Illustrator, and then I traced it, and then I scaled it down. My reference point is 60 meters from this pin to this pin, which I understand is how the sticks are measured. So if it says it's a 3-meter stick, it's not from this point to this point, but from that point to that point. And this is how it compares size-wise to the standard one. So you can see just how much shorter the ME stick is than the standard sized stick. Now I'm not going to be using this template as is. I'm actually going to cut it apart because this is a multi-piece build. So I'm going to, this red line basically is the outside piece of brass that is going to be wrapped around it. So I'm going to cut this inner part out first, And then this little mohawk piece will be done separately as well. So I'm just going to run through this thing with a fresh X-Acto blade here and get chopping. So I ended up taking the template and mounting it on a little piece of cardstock here just to give it some more rigidity. But the first thing I need to cut out is the bit of metal that's going to go around here. That's going to be a strip, and it's going to be about 7.8 millimeters thick. So I've measured that distance between this and the blade on my new little table saw here. I have not used this thing yet. This is going to be its maiden voyage. I figured running a straight strip through it would be the best thing. It comes with this so-so fence. It seems to be pretty straight. I'm using this as kind of another fence. Eventually, I'm going to build my own fence. You can get another one of these from Proxxon, but with shipping and everything, they're about 28 bucks for a little cast piece of zinc. I think I could probably do better than that. So eventually, later on, I will make another piece for that, and it's also got a little vacuum duct in the back. I'm not going to use that right now because I have plans to build a vacuum system for my bench. Again, that'll be something for down the road. There's this little guard on here. I don't know if that's going to be getting used. I'll try it on the first go, but if I find that it gets in the way, I'm probably just going to go without it. Yeah, that's about it. Let's get to it. So I just totally shot like all of that without audio or press and record because I thought I had already pressed record. This thing's cool until you get to this little guy right here. It just runs into it and it does not want to go past. So I don't know if this guard is going to be sticking around. It doesn't appear to be throwing up a lot of debris, and I'm really finding no reason to want to leave this guard on here. Don't think this is influencing it at all. I think it's just having a difficult time getting past this. As far as cutting, it's been great. You guys would have seen that had I remembered to press record. Anyways, let's carry on. See if this thing won't go past here. If it was just a simple case of this thing being a little bit bent, we're going to pause and I'm going to remove this thing entirely. Let's back it off the blade a bit. Yeah, that's not cool. I don't like that. Alright, guard. Adios. Alright, so I had to remove the guard from this. As you guys saw, it was impeding my ability to push the material through, so I had to take it off. Let me make something extremely clear. I do not advocate the removal of safety equipment from any tool. This is the only saw I've ever had that I had to take a guard off to be able to safely use the saw. If you take something off of your equipment, you're putting yourself at risk for injury. Bear that in mind. I do not condone it. Alright, so back in the saddle, let's get this going. I really like this thing. That was a clean cut. Really nice. You guys probably can't see it, but there's no jagged edge. It's just a smooth, clean cut. I will never, ever, ever have to buy strips of material, strips of brass again from now on. I'm buying large sheets of it, or as big as I can fit on this thing, and I'm making my own stuff. Definitely worth the purchase. Really bummed that the safety didn't work. Maybe I'll revisit the blade guard in the future, but I think I'm just going to leave it off and exercise a lot of caution when I use this thing. Make sure I don't put anything on top of it, and then as soon as I'm done using it, unplug the bad unit. But that was really clean, really impressive. I did pick up an aftermarket blade for this. This is the 90 tooth blade that Proxxon sells for it, and it worked out really well. really clean. I don't know how geometrically correct this fence is, but it looks like it came out pretty sharp. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, looking all right. That's cool. I like that. I will still use my bandsaw for when I need curve cuts and whatnot, but trying to use my bandsaw to rip material like this always ended up with me having to take this thing to the sander and try to clean it up, which always made pieces come out uneven. So I'm really excited about this thing. That was cool. Oh, looking massy. The reason I'm doing it this way is so that this next one that I cut comes out as close to this one as possible, because this is the exact size that I want. Got both pieces together here. Just gonna do some final finish touches here. Alright, so I've been going over this thing trying to figure out how it is that I want to go about assembling it, and I've had various ideas of what it is that I want to do, but I think I've settled on doing something similar to where they actually do it from the factory. So here's the stick that came with the model, and if you can see, I was originally going to wrap the brass, this piece, all the way around and then have it come together somewhere in the back right here where it wouldn't be as visible. But then when I looked at this one, I realized that it's like they have a tube set in between all the brass right here, and then the outer, not the brass, but the material right here, and then the outer piece of steel came around and was welded right there and there. When I looked at reference photos of sticks that were off the machine, I realized that that's actually how they're done in full scale. So I think I'm going to do something similar to that, and in order to do that I need to cut out holes in the end of the brass so that I can take a piece of tube and mount it in like right there. So I tested it out on a piece of scrap just so that I don't screw up the pieces that I made, and I think that's the way I'm going to go with it. So from this point moving forward, I'm going to start assembling this. There will be a little bit of narration here and there maybe, but I'm just going to run through this and take you guys with. So we're putting this top piece of metal in here to act as a shim so that this stuff doesn't move around so much. I was pretty excited about doing this one. I watched some other videos on soldering that had been put up by other model builders and learned a few lessons and tried to apply them with this one, and it definitely came out a lot better. That turned out really good. I didn't get it perfect on the first shot. It was a little bit off, so I had to reposition it, heat it to get it perfectly squared up. But it came out really good. This is just what I was hoping would happen. So now it's time to punch some holes in here real quick before I go put the outside trim on it. And the holes that I need to put in are going to be that hole and then that hole. And then I'll take and clean up the edges a little bit because the internal frame material is sticking out a bit. Not bad. Practice is definitely letting me build up my skills to get much cleaner results out of my work. Some hard-learned lessons in the last couple years of doing this, but getting better. Alright, so I have an idea. So I've got this strip that I need to bend into the shape of this stick, and originally what I was going to do is bend it separate from this and then attach it and solder it on, but I'm going to try something else. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm about to find out. So what I've done is just initially soldered this strip. Let me zoom out so you guys can get a better picture. And what I'm going to try to do is bend it around, and I've done it this way to hold it in place so that I can use this as the form that I'm bending against. All the corners are pretty rounded off. Should make it easier. I don't have to do any hard bends, hard edges. So hopefully this is going to work. We'll find out right now. So far so good. I think I'm going to solder as I go. Kind of help give me a little retention there. So far this is working out. Not quite as straightforward as I thought it would be, but as long as I take my time going around, it's definitely working out. Hitting it with the brass hammer a little bit to knock it into shape, but it's coming along. Not bad at all. Pretty solid. Good little piece. Came out pretty square. Got some cleanup work to do. But I'm really stoked on that. Got a little bit of tubing here stacked with some solder. Another way of doing this is to tin it before you slide it together, but I don't have a good soldering iron right now and it's a little bit more challenging to try to tin with a torch, so I'm just going to try to do it this way. Alright, got that portion soldered in. Still need to go and clean these up. And then when I install the top piece for the hydraulics, I will cover all this up in such a way that it is protected from the heat so all this doesn't fall out. Oh, looks like an angry kitty. Meow. Okay, for demonstration purposes only, I'm going to see if I can do a score and snap on this. So these two lines are the lines that I cut into it with the bandsaw before I realized that my fingers were probably a little too close to the blade to be doing that. And I'm going to score a line from that point to that point and then see if I can break this out of there. Just going to take this. I'm going to use the back of the blade. I'm not going to use the front of it. And I'm just going to score a hard line in there. Just grab it and then just start bending, and then it comes right off. It is now time to solder. So I've cut both of these top pieces out and they are ready to get put in place. As you can see, I have an alligator clip, and between the alligator clip is two little pieces of aluminum which make up the size of the gap that I need for the hydraulics to drop into. I'm using aluminum because the solder hopefully won't stick to it, and I'm going to apply the flux. And then I'm going to go ahead and solder it in place. Just give you guys a zoom out of the nutty little setup we got here. You can see I have the little stand with the alligator clips holding one side of it together, and then the alligator clip on the top is holding all of the rest in place. Alright, since there is a slight gap there, I'm not even going to try to solder that point. I don't need a full solder all the way around to get this to work. I just needed to solder on those two sides, which is where I'm getting the most contact. So I'm just going to try to apply the heat there and then see if I can get that point to solder. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to have to find a second approach that will allow me to get this top part hot enough without undoing all of my previous work. Alright, so I went ahead and soldered the back on the other side as well, and came in with the steel brush and cleaned off all the junk, reapplied flux, put a little piece of solder on there, smaller piece this time. So I'm going to give it another go here, see if I can get that to heat up and bond. It's like so close. A couple degrees too cool, I think. All right, we are done. And I got this stuff to lay down by taking this piece, moving it up in the vise, and then taking the C-clamp, moving it down so that I can get more heat exposure up here. And then I used the wet towel trick that was suggested on the Scale Model Workshop YouTube channel. Huge shout out to him. That was an extremely useful tip because it ended up keeping this thing cooler so that I didn't end up losing any of my solders. Take this off there because it looks kind of gross. But turned out all right. I have solder everywhere except for like right here because there's a little bit of a gap. Oop, went blurry. There we go. It's a little bit of a gap there, but yeah, worked out well. I'll just fill that in with some putty. I got some new stuff that I want to try out. Another thing from the Scale Model Workshop website, he had suggested, or he had reviewed this stuff in one of the videos. Let me zoom out here. It's just like a two-part, basically epoxy. It's in a putty form, but I liked the way it worked on his video, so I'd like to give it a try. I think it'd be useful for filling that in. It's time to even these up. This one's a little bit taller than that one. Kind of did that intentionally. I didn't really care about getting these exact because I wanted to make sure that they were even once they were installed on this. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll bore the holes in it. And I think we're done for the day. Alright, my apologies for the poor audio. The batteries for my microphone have died, and I have two sets that I rotate out, but unfortunately one set I think is no more. So we'll have to use the mic that's on the camera. So what I'm doing right now is taking this putty, so this is that epoxy. Another item that I was keyed in on with the Scale Modelers channel. It's pretty nice. It mixes into just a basic putty, a lot like clay. Actually, this stuff is called epoxy clay. And I've just been taking a little sharp squared off instrument here and pushing it under that little gap that was left in there from where I goofed up on grinding out this piece. And I'm just pushing it through from the back so that it fills that void, and then I will take and shape it off, just squeezing it through and just scrape the excess off. I'll just take this guy, just come on through, scrape the excess off, and then just continue to just work it till it's smooth, till it looks like the solder, and just let it cure, and it should be good to go to get painted. I'll get back in there and clean the inside out as well. And there you have it, pretty straightforward. Aside from that, this thing is, this part is done. I drilled these holes a little bit smaller than these ones, so these are all 2mm holes, bigger pins than these ones are 1.5. So on the inside of the hydraulic, I'll just drop a little 2mm shim inside there. And I'm going to try to replicate those like oblong style pins that have there. They're actually going to be a second hole getting drilled in once I start building those pins like there, and that will be a probably like a 0.5 mm hole That way the pins will lock in. I'm going to custom make all of the pins for this model. I'm not going to be reusing any of the ones that came with it because I'm going to make some of them removable. Like the ones that are going to go to hold the bucket on are going to be removable in the event that I decide to make more buckets down the road. But that pretty much wraps up this episode. This piece is done. I'll give you guys a little comparo here against the other one. You can see the mass excavator one is definitely a lot smaller, and all of my amateur engineering has worked out well. I will be able to get a full range of motion out of the bucket's swing, so the hydraulics worked out the way that I had hoped. This has been a lot of fun. I think obviously between this episode and the next one I'll have finished like the little itty bits of putty work here. Let's see, next episode we get into all of this small nitty gritty stuff. So I need to make the piece that's going to go on top of here to hold the other hydraulic in place, and I need to remake these parts. So this is they've got all different names. I've heard some people call these H-bar links, dog bones, so on and so forth. In looking at the reference photos that I have, I've found that the mass excavator has proprietary H-bars and dog bone pieces. This one, you can see it's a little bit skinnier in the middle. The one for the mass excavator is not. It's the same thickness throughout. This part's a little bit bigger, but it's the same thickness throughout. So I was either going to modify this one to look like one or just make one from scratch. I'm just going to make one from scratch, and then I will need to make new dog bones as well. The one for the mass excavator is definitely a lot thicker, and that will finish out this. So we got that, the boom piece, and then we'll see where we are for time. Like I said, I'm filming these episodes 1 week at a time, but things are coming along pretty good. Give you guys a quick little teaser shot there. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I really appreciate the viewership, and we will get together on the next episode. Adios.